Why is it sticky?
Out of all the Marvel Disney Plus shows, the one that I think had the most missed potential is What If. I know I'm not the only one who thinks this, because from the first season's release in 2021, people have been heavily criticizing this project for a wide variety of reasons. I know this video is coming later, probably after all the buzz around the show has died down, but I wanted time to arrange my thoughts about it and look at the series as a whole now that it's officially over. This isn't going to be some big retrospective on the series and why it's either a masterpiece or the worst thing ever. I just wanted to explain my problems with it and how it could have been better now that we know that Season 3 is the end. Granted, some of my problems may be the exact same as everybody else's, but still, I figured I would throw my hat in the ring and talk about something that could have been a lot better than it was, and had a lot going for it. Spoilers for all 3 seasons of What If, and with that being said, let's begin.
You shut up!
So, I have 3 main issues with the show, 2 of which almost everyone else also has, so I'll just start with the first one, which is the lackluster ideas.
So, time for a cheaper approach. Allow me to introduce the multiverse.
One of the coolest things in What If Season 3 is the epilogue, showing stills of what if scenarios that really overshadow almost all of the concepts the show actually used. Now, granted, a lot of these other characters apparently couldn't be used because the showrunners only wanted to work with material that was in the MCU, so no X-Men or Fantastic Four or anything like that. Maybe if the show was coming out now, they could have access to those characters. I mean, a variant of Storm shows up in the last part of Season 3, but even still, there are plenty of cool characters and scenarios across all of the different projects in the MCU already. For example, let's take a look at one of the best episodes. Season 1, Episode 4, What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands? It explores concepts relating to the multiverse, which is obviously topical right now, and also has a great emotional core with Steven and Christine. On top of that, it uses animation to its fullest potential, showing tons of cool flashy magic, and even different styles of animation. It checks all the good boxes this show has. Great animation, great voice acting, great writing, being a standalone story, and working within the MCU while still fleshing out new ideas. There are a few episodes that are similar to this. Infinity Ultron's episode is awesome, exploring what would happen if an evil AI like Ultron got his hands on the Infinity Stones, and the Watcher getting fully involved is pretty cool to see. Iron Man landing on Sakaar was sick. Seeing him use his technical expertise to compete with somebody like the Grandmaster was very creative, and Jeff Goldblum reprising his role was a nice touch.
By the way, can I call you Mojo?
Never.
No? Possibly Tin Man.
No.
The animation in Agatha's Hollywood episode was very appealing, even if everything else about it was kinda subpar. And admittedly, I also liked the Christmas special in Season 2 as well, even if it was just to see Sam Rockwell again as Justin Hammer, because I think he got wasted in Iron Man 2.
And it's capable of reducing the population of any standing structure to 0. I call it the ex-wife.
However, for each good episode we got, it seems like there were 3 more that either weren't fleshed out properly or weren't a good concept to begin with. The Killmonger episode, where he takes over Wakanda, had a lot of promise but ended right where it was getting interesting. The mech suit episode barely had the mechs in it to begin with. The 1602 and 1872 episodes both felt like they weren't exploring their settings in an interesting way. The Zombies episode had a lot of loose ends, but I'm going to discount that because it's getting its own series, so hopefully those get continued. One of the worst offenders in my opinion though is the Emergence episode, Season 3 Episode 5. It takes an interesting large-scale concept of the celestial emergence and just doesn't do much with it. Instead of showing the world reacting to something that big, it focuses on a small list of characters that, at least in this, aren't very interesting. I like Mysterio's inclusion in the way he's presented, but he doesn't really do much, and the other characters are the same, even Ironheart, who's the lead.
You shut up!
My second issue I have with the series is, oddly enough, the connectivity all the episodes share. Funny that something the current MCU is struggling with ends up being a detriment here. I will admit that I've seen some solid arguments defending the connecting story in the show, but I personally still think it would have benefited from being more of an anthology. I think of shows like Star Wars Visions, Love, Death, and Robots, or even recently Secret Level. The anthology style could lend itself really well to Marvel, and there are some episodes that stick to that, but then at the end of every season there's always a crossover finale that ties a lot of them together and ruins that. I think, in general, the finales of the Marvel Disney Plus shows have a tendency to be kind of rushed or too large scale. I think Moon Knight is a decent example, but What If is probably the biggest offender, even though it is based off the multiverse. I mean, as an example, look at the Season 1 finale. Killmonger's potentially cool episode couldn't have been continued due to him being trapped in a pocket dimension. To use an analogy, I think the show would have been better if it was more like batches of cookies than a 3-course meal, if that makes sense.
The Muffin Man?
You shut up.
I mentioned earlier that the characters in the Emergence episode were boring, and the truth is that the characters in this show are just kind of weak. And I'm not saying they're weak strength-wise, not at all. Everyone is just as powerful as they are in the mainline continuity. Sometimes a bit more. I'll try to explain it like this. In the MCU, and media in general, but specifically in the MCU, characters are a big part of what makes it special. A lot of the fun in this shared universe comes from seeing characters you like, or at least know, come together and interact. If one of the movies or shows has a lackluster story, the characters are usually well written enough to keep you interested. Usually. I mean, look at Ant-Man 3. That movie's plot is pretty stupid. But I really liked Ant-Man himself and his struggle to stand out and be a hero, and Kang a little bit, I guess. But here, all of the characters seem kind of hollow, and some of that may be from either the runtime of the episodes or the voice direction, which that is just a separate issue that I'll talk about later. Another thing with the characters is the roster the show works with. Seeing the bigger names, at least as the main focus, isn't very common, and instead, most episodes use the B and C listers. For every episode that focuses on someone like Iron Man or Stephen Strange, there's 3 that focus on people like Happy Hogan, Okoye, Darcy Lewis, and occasionally newer characters from Phase 4 and 5. And it's not like these ones aren't interesting, most of them have good moments in the mainline continuity, but here they're either not being written well enough to be entertaining, or they just don't lend themselves well to the specific what-if scenario. I'm gonna use Red Guardian as an example here, and another YouTuber named Nando V Movies actually brought up a great point about him.
Is that either you need no Red Guardian or a lot of Red Guardian. A little bit of Red Guardian doesn't work.
He's a decent character in my opinion, but the amount of screen time he has can make or break the quality of his appearance, and in the mech episode, because he's only in it for a few minutes, it doesn't really stick the landing, and feels more like the generic Joss Whedon-style quips, which is unfortunate because I know at least this character has a good emotional core to him. Hopefully in Thunderbolts he'll get a little bit more time to shine. I also understand wanting to show off some of the newer characters in the MCU. I'm not trying to say that's a bad thing, but sometimes I can't help but think that one of the older ones fits better with the specific story in the episode. Kate Bishop and Shang-Chi as cowboys in the 1872 episode is pretty cool, and I like the addressing of the Asian labor workers, which was an actual thing in history, but don't you think it would be cool to see some of the characters from the actual 1872 book put to motion, like Iron Man, Hulk, or Bullseye? Sticking with the characters, though, the show does come up with some original ones too, and they're okay. Kahori is, in my opinion, the best. Her episode is unique, well animated, and I think she has a pretty solid character arc. The Natasha Lyonne Bird Lady is kind of forgettable, with very roughly defined abilities, and she wasn't really introduced in the best way. I'm sorry, but being Seth Green's daughter cannot save you.
You're out of luck until you've gone duck.
However, no what-if opinion is complete without talking about the most powerful character in the entire Marvel Universe, Captain Carter. Getting the good things out of the way first, I think the idea of Peggy becoming a super soldier first isn't terrible, and I think in a vacuum her cameo in Multiverse of Madness was pretty cool, but by no means does she warrant being the main character of an entire series. Her first episode is fine, it's nice to see Howard Stark and all that, but then she plays a pretty important role in the Season 1 finale, which I already kind of talked about. In Season 2, she gets a sequel episode, which isn't great and really could have been any other idea. And then at the end of that, she gets taken to the medieval Europe world, and she becomes the main focus of that episode, instead of, any character actually from that world. Loki is a Shakespearean poet, Hulk is the man in the Iron Mask, Captain America as Robin Hood? No? Okay. And after that, she becomes the main focus of the Season 2 finale, which might be because of her ties to Doctor Strange from Season 1, but still. And as if that wasn't enough, she's also the main character of the Season 3 finale. She sacrifices herself to save everyone, and it's basically just a lesser version of Loki Season 2's ending. You'd think in this series the only real main character would be the Watcher, but no, across all of these episodes she's just so unbelievably overpowered, and as a reminder, she's just a super soldier, and she's able to go head to head with huge threats like it's nothing. And other MCU super soldiers that have more training than her have a harder time than she does. Now yes, a lot of the time she's enhanced with cosmic energy, but even without it, she's nigh unstoppable. I mean, in her live-action appearance, she's cut in half and put down like a dog. Recently, I've seen a lot of people refer to her as an industry plant, and at this point, I can't help but agree.
You shut up!
I also want to touch on animation and casting. Animation-wise, the show has a problem similar to the new Spider-Man show where the style is good, but the actual animation can be a bit stiff, which leads to a lot of action feeling kind of weird and hard to follow. Maybe I'm predisposed because I've spent so much time analyzing animation in my comparison series, but I feel like there are still times where it's a glaring issue. Comic book style 3D is a risky gamble, which comes out looking either really good or just whatever, and this falls into the latter more often than the former in my opinion. I'm by no means a professional who knows what goes into animation and keyframes and all that, but it's just something I noticed. Voice acting is a whole other issue though, where the majority of the cast are the actors from the movies. I understand wanting to make the animated characters sound like their live-action counterparts, but the thing is, and I want to emphasize this, actors are not voice actors, and vice versa. An actor can be great on camera, but not so much behind a microphone. There are some that are great at both, like Clancy Brown, Ron Perlman, Alan Tudyk, and Jeffrey Combs, but, I mean, listen to Sebastian Stan here.
Who are you supposed to be? Queen of England?
Oh, hi, Mark.
Sometimes you'll get a few that perform well, like Benedict Cumberbatch and even Haley Atwell, but I'd say the most consistent one is probably just Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher. However, some characters, like Iron Man, have impersonators that sound identical to the on-screen counterpart, which is pretty common in Hollywood spin-off stuff, and I think that works much better than stage and screen actors trying to act the same while stuck in the recording booth. Thankfully, X-Men 97 and seemingly the new Spider-Man show understand these things and have good voice actors or people like Coleman Domingo who can perform in different situations better than poor Mark Ruffalo over here.
That sort of seems like overkill.
You shut up!
Finally, I want to end this video like the show and talk about some ideas cooler than the actual ones the show used. First of all, one that everybody has asked for was what if the other half got snapped in Infinity War, which would have been awesome, hands down, but some others that I can think of right now are what if Hulk invaded Earth, which would have basically just been the World War Hulk comic? What if the secret invasion happened with the Avengers? What if Daredevil and Spider-Man fought the Kingpin? What if Wakanda stayed secret to the world? What if the Avengers fought Ego the Living Planet? And probably my favorite, what if the Armor Wars arc actually happened?
That shit is never coming out. I bet you don't even remember it existed.
Instead of it taking place after Tony Stark's death, it can happen with him still alive, and you can bring in people like Justin Hammer, Obadiah Stane, Wilson Fisk, and maybe even Ulysses Klaue, and that would have been sick. So, I know I said I could think of those on the spot, and I guess I did when I was writing the script, because that's just a whole segment I wrote in, so, you know, there you go. In general, What If is a series that just didn't achieve what it set out to do in my opinion. It came close at times, but never in full. And this video wasn't an episode-by-episode breakdown on the show's failings. I don't think that would be very fun unless I did it with somebody else, but instead, talking about all of these general flaws and what I didn't like seems like a better idea, and I'm pretty satisfied with what I've said today. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you found it entertaining and informative. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more like it, leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below, and I'll see you nerds later.
Tell me why it ain't nothing but a holiday. Tell me why it ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way.